let's get started with today's Chumash. Short Chumash today, but very, very powerful. So far in our story, we're learning that Yosef was taking the brothers for a ride, right? Yosef was taking the brothers for a real ride, and he basically planned, and I think I'm going to do Tuesday night's class about this week, so stay tuned. David Jarasha, if you're here, you want to join us. Why did Yosef feel, or whoever asked this question, why did Yosef feel it was him to play God, and do this, treat the brothers in the way that he was treating him? So why did Yosef think that this was his place? So what did he do? Yosef first made a whole thing saying, I'll only believe you if you bring your younger brother. If you don't bring him, I'm not going to believe you, that you're really spies, I think. And then he sent they finally brought Binyamin, and as soon as they bring Binyamin, he does something very scary. He plants his secret goblet in Binyamin's bag, and then he sends the police after them to go search who stole his goblet. And the one brother that the father really says, I'm going to die if you don't return him, he has Binyamin arrested and placed in he's going to put him in prison and send the brothers back. And finally, this is really where the story is trying to go, is that Yehuda puts a stop to it. And here we have Yehuda standing up, sticking his neck out literally for his brother Binyamin. And the commentaries explain, just the simple reason the commentaries explain about why is Yosef doing all this, is because Yosef wants to make sure that they will protect Benjamin. That was his whole plan here. The whole Canadian plan he's doing is he wants to have Benjamin arrested and wants the brothers to do the opposite of what they did to him. They sold him as a common slave. They took their own brother and they sold him. And now he's going to set up the story again, come back again, and make sure that the brothers will not act the way they acted with him, with Yosef's mother from his mother. And that's the story. But Yigash Elav Yehuda. So Yehuda approaches him. Remember, Shimon was arrested. They let Shimon out, and then they let everybody go with Binyamin, and they return with all the brothers, and they tell Yosef, you will be slaves to you. And Yosef says, no, I'm only arresting Benjamin, and you all go free. Why should you get arrested? Benjamin's the one that stole it. I'm arresting him, going to put him in jail. And here Yehuda faces off with Yosef. Vayigash Elav Yehuda. So Yehuda approaches Yosef, and he says, Bi Adoini. He says, listen, my master. Let me speak my words into the ears of my master. Rashi says, listen carefully. Let these words enter your ears, penetrate your ears. And don't get angry with what I'm about to say. Rashi says, what do we see from that? When somebody says, don't get angry, it means that Yehuda was going to speak tough. And don't forget, who is he speaking to? He's speaking to the viceroy of Egypt, one of the most powerful people in the world at the time. And he's going to confront him with very strong words. And we know that obviously by saying, don't get angry at what I'm about to say. Because you, my dear Yosef, and he doesn't know he's Yosef, my dear viceroy of Egypt, they called him Tzafnas Paneach, Mr. Tzafnas Paneach, or Yosef. My viceroy of Egypt, you are like Pharaoh. And Rashi is actually going to explain the words Yehuda telling Yosef, you're like Pharaoh, in 4 different ways. So here we go. Here are the 4 ways to understand the deeper meaning of what Yehuda means to tell the viceroy of Egypt, you're like Pharaoh. Either one, simple meaning is, you're important as a king. Listen, you're viceroy, but you're like the king. So I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to have open, candid conversation with you. Don't get angry at me. I know you're, in my eyes, like a king, but I'm going to speak freely what I have on my mind. Then Rashi gives us, besides a simple interpretation, Yosef, you're like as mighty as Pharaoh. Rashi says 3 other interpretations from the Medrash, from the oral tradition. 1, do you remember the story Yehuda is referencing between Pharaoh and my grandmother Sarah? Remember, Abraham went down to Egypt with Sarah, and she was kidnapped by Pharaoh then, a while ago, and Pharaoh ended up getting leprosy because he tried to have relations with Sarah, and God protected Sarah. So Yehuda's coded message to, Yehuda's coded message to Yosef is, listen, mister, we've been through this. Your great-grandfather, whoever was Pharaoh then, grabbed my great-grandmother, Sarah, right, his great-grandmother, and you know what ended up happening. So listen, you're like Pharaoh. I'm warning you. This was a warning shot here in the wording, telling him you and Pharaoh are the same boat. Another meaning, the third. So that's the second interpretation. Third interpretation of him telling him you're like Pharaoh. He says, you are like Pharaoh. You're not an honest and trustworthy person. Why are you not like Pharaoh? Because just like Pharaoh doesn't keep his word, you also don't keep your word. So where do we see that Pharaoh didn't keep his word? Pharaoh said that no slave could ever become royalty in Egypt. And Pharaoh made Yosef to become royalty of Egypt. He was once a common slave. So he says, you, mister, you're like Pharaoh. He doesn't keep his word and you don't keep your word. And how is he telling him that you're not keeping your word now? Because you promised that if we brought Benjamin here, you wouldn't touch him. And now look what you're doing. You're ending up arresting Benjamin. So you and Pharaoh are the same. You're a common, untrustworthy person, just like your boss who you work for Pharaoh. So it was like a good, like a shtech, as they say in Yiddish, poking him, saying you're an untrustworthy person. And that is the third interpretation. And finally, the fourth interpretation, Rashi says, he says, listen, you and Pharaoh are the same. If you keep on pushing our buttons, we're going to get up and kill you and him together. I'm warning you. This is a warning shot. We've been playing nice till now. I'm not scared of you, and I'm not scared of Pharaoh. And I'm warning you, don't play games with us because we'll take you down. We're very strong, powerful people, the sons of Yaakov, and we're warning you not to play games with us. So any of those interpretations, again, Yehuda is standing up. He's begging him. He's trying to deal with him. He's saying, don't get angry at me, but I'm going to talk my mind. And he lays down the story as he sees it, as the brothers see it. Verse 19. Adoni shalas avdecha, my master Yosef, you asked us, your servants. Lemar, yesh l'chem avayach, you asked us. Do you have a father and do you have a brother? You asked us that once upon a time. The Torah says that it clearly here. Remember, we were discussing this. I think you asked if he asked him that question, if Yosef actually asked him, do you have a father and a brother? And here the Torah says clearly that he did ask them, actually. So we see from here that part of the conversation, original conversation between Yosef and the brothers was he actually asked him, do you have a father or a brother? And Yehuda's pointing this out because Yehuda's saying, why did you ask that? Why did you ask us if you have a father and brother? You finagled and planned this whole plot over here in order to have us take our younger brother. Like, why are you asking us these questions? What, you want to know if you have a daughter or a sister that wants to, why are you asking us if you have brothers? What kind of ridiculous question you ask that of people coming to buy food? Guy comes to your store, you start asking him, do you have a sister? Do you have a brother? Do you have a father? You finagle this whole thing. Why do you even ask us to begin with about our father and our brother? And we answered you, our master. We have an old father, and we told you, he has a son that is left at home in his old age, a precious son that was born to him at a very old age. And we told you that this younger boy had an older brother from that mother who died. He's the only one left from that wife, from that mother. And we told you our father loves that child. So we told you clearly when we started this conversation that we have a younger brother. We told you that our father cannot have the child leave him. Remember Yosef, viceroy of Egypt, how this whole thing started. Now, why did he say that Yosef died? Yosef didn't die. They know that Yehuda knows that they sold Yosef. He didn't end up dying. So Rashi answers that question. Rashi says Yehuda was making that up because all he needed now was for Yosef to say, for the viceroy to say, okay, go bring me that other brother that's alive. So he made up a lie. He said, the other brother died, so we can't bring him, he doesn't want Yosef to start saying, okay, bring that guy to me. So he just said Yosef died, and we told you that our father has a son from that mother, from younger brother of the kid who died, and we told you his father preciously loves him. We told you that straight out in the beginning. What did you tell us back? Bring him down, that younger brother. All I want to do is look at him. All I want to see him. I want to make sure your story's true. But we told you clearly then, this young boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves his father, our father's going to die. Or, I'm sorry, he's going to die. Benjamin will die. Why? Why are we arguing that Benjamin will die? Because his mother died on the way. His brother died on the way. So therefore, we can't bring him to you. And you still said bring him now. You told us, if you don't bring your younger brother down here, don't see my face again. So you left us with no choice. And then we went back to our father. We told our father the whole story. And our father said, you got to go back to Egypt and go get more food for us. So we told our father, we can't go down. Only if we have our younger brother with us, then we'll go down. Because we can't go down to this man, the viceroy of Egypt, unless we have our younger brother. So our servant, our father, your servant said to us, our father told us straight out, you know children, he told us, that my wife had 2 sons for me. The older one, Yosef, left me, and he came back torn to pieces, right? I haven't seen him since. And our father told us, if you take this younger child from me, and something, God forbid, happens to him, our father said, you bring my head down to misery, to the grave. I'll die I'll die. I cannot handle it anymore. And I know danger happens to this family on the trip. I know what happened to his mother. I know what happened to his brother, and I don't want to send him down with you. And now Rashi explains that, look, I lost his brother, I lost his mother. What I do is I look at that younger son, Benjamin, and I see my wife and I see my son, and I get comfort because I feel like they're with me still. But you know what's going to happen if I lose him? I'll feel like I lost all 3 of them in one day because I still had one left from those 2. So he was kind of my rock that I would always go to feel my previous wife and to feel my previous son. You take him and I kind of like lose. Imagine, God forbid, somebody loses a wife and 2 children in one day, and that's the experience I'll have if Benjamin doesn't come back. And now finally finishes today's one. And now we're going to come back to our dad without the son. The boy's not with us. The souls are attached to each other. How can you do this to us, Yosef? I don't care who stole what, I guess. We cannot have the situation. You finagled this thing. You set it up, this whole trap. And it's a terrible, terrible position that you put us in. We cannot have this happen. We cannot have this take place. And Yehuda is really, really setting down the case in front of the viceroy of Egypt, and he's telling him as it is, and he's putting his life in danger, and he's giving Yosef over the head, telling him that it's all his fault, and he cannot have this happen. It's a tremendous power in Yehuda to stand up to the viceroy of Egypt, and this is exactly where Yosef wants him to go, according to the commentaries. This is what Yosef wants. He wants Yehuda, who's the leader, to take responsibility. I'm just thinking in life, you know what? One of the biggest things is it's just registering in my mind. One of the biggest things in life, I think this actually makes sense as I'm learning this with you guys, is responsibility. And people have a very hard time learning responsibility. It's very hard in life to learn responsibility. I know, like, different things that I'm into, whether it's responsibility for your finances, right? There's a guy called Dave Ramsey, who I mention sometimes, who he teaches people to take responsibility for your finances, or take responsibility for your relationships, take responsibility for raising your kids. People don't in life want to take responsibility. Take responsibility for your addictions. Not to drink when you're not supposed to. Take responsibility for your life. Learning to take responsibility is probably one of the hardest things in life and one of the most important things in life. You go through life trying to get away, but you never take responsibility. And it's like Yehuda, just learning with you guys now, realizing like Yehuda's learned, I'm taking responsibility. I am part of this family, and I'm going to make sure that Yosef is going to be okay. By the way, connecting it to Hey Tevis, the special day, I find it very interesting that the Rebbe was telling the followers, somebody help me out here. Take responsibility for the case. The Rebbe actually said, I love one of the lines the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said, my thing is to learn Rambam. If there's a question in Torah in the study of Maimonides and to answer it, that's my passion. But why am I getting involved? Why can no one in the Hasidim or the followers take up the law case or daven or do something about it, basically saying, learn to take responsibility for life. So perhaps that's the thing in the Yosef got his brothers to learn. Take responsibility for your actions. I think that might be a very powerful message in the Chumash. Any questions or comments before we move on to today's Tanya? Yes, David, go ahead. Please.
Okay. So, let's just start with the comfort that Binyamin provided. It's like, it goes to the issue about how the children of Rachel were favored, and that the other brothers knew that, and so it must have been very tough for Yehuda to acknowledge that, not that they were the second-class citizens, but that Yosef and Binyamin were so elevated because Yaakov really, Rachel was his true love. So, Leah wasn't a concubine. She wasn't a Pelegah. She wasn't a concubine, but she was definitely the second tier wife. But for him to still be able to advocate, it took a lot.
I have a very powerful thought for you on this. I actually thought about this over Shabbos. I'm happy you asked that question. So I actually was thinking it's an argument for capitalism. The argument for capitalism is really what's going on over here. I'll tell you where I came to this thought. Because you'll notice that when Yehuda seated the brothers around the table when Benjamin finally came, before he sent them away and stuck the goblet in Benjamin's thing, he gave Benjamin more food, 5 times more food than the other brothers. So he places all the brothers down, and he singles out Benjamin, sits Benjamin right next to him, and he gives Benjamin a much better meal than all his older brothers. He has brothers who are way older than him. Takes the youngest brother and shows him tremendous honor and respect. And I'll be honest with you, what was going through my head was, what's wrong with you, Yosef? You should be doing the opposite. You should be giving your brother, you're making problems again. And I saw a commentary said exactly the opposite. Is Yosef was testing the waters. He wanted to see if the brothers will be okay with Benjamin being singled out and being special and getting more honor. He wanted to, it's exactly what he wanted to see. That's why it made a lot of sense to me all of a sudden. He deliberately gave Benjamin more food than the rest to create the jealousy, to mix the waters, test the waters. How are you going to respond? Then he's going to have Benjamin arrested, and he wants to see now, you're going to throw Benjamin under the bus or not. So he wanted to see if the brothers will get over their jealousy of someone else having more. It was fascinating idea, and that's why I realized this might be a key to capitalism. So what am I saying? I think you get it already, what I'm trying to say. Socialism is that everyone has to be equal. Everyone has to be equal. It doesn't matter if you're a much more talented guy, and it's unhealthy in a way. I'll tell you why it's unhealthy. It sounds very healthy. It's unhealthy because, you know what, God might have created somebody much more talented than you who needs to have the position of, let's say, being the rabbi, being the teacher. Not everyone can be the teacher. It's just not a possibility. You have to respect that God gave people certain, and respect the talents that God gave them. So Yosef was really more talented. Yosef, you could say, perhaps was more talented, and his father showed him respect and loved him because he was more talented. And Yosef felt, capitalism would argue, that that's okay. And you have to learn to get comfortable with the fact that you're not the best, and that there's someone else that's better than you. And if somebody gives that person more honor, you have to be okay with it. You understand? So he was basically teaching them a lesson in capitalism that, listen, you're not remedied as long as if Yosef has to change and make everybody equal, everybody socialists, and Benjamin has to be level, and you're not really healthy. You're still unhealthy because you're living a socialist life that if, as long as everybody's not in the same, then you're not okay with that. No, a healthy person has to be okay with other people getting more honor than him and getting more prestige with him. And fine, he says, okay, I move on. God created him more talented than myself, and that's it, and that's the way of life. So it might actually be, this could be a strong argument to capitalism in the fact, yes, that guy's smarter than you, he's more talented than you, and he's going to make more money than you, and that's it. That's just part of life. That's how Hashem made him. And you have to learn in life to be comfortable with that. How do you like that?
I do like that, but then it raises the question of why, I understand that, but then why was the system in Judaism that the Bechor got the double portion? I guess that's like by default, you have the pecking order. Yeah.
You're right. I'll tell you a cute thing why the Bechor gets double portion. I heard a very cute thing. The parents make all the mistakes on the firstborn child, so they have to make up for it, for all the things they did wrong to their firstborn son. They not have to pay up for the mistakes that they made. It actually says it somewhere. I saw it. But anyways,
as a firstborn, and my mom is on, but I think I agree.
My son was like, yeah, 100%. You're right. Firstborn son, definitely. You make all the mistakes on that kid. That's why you got to pay up for it double than the rest. It's really funny. But so that's a cute idea. But there's other reasons to it, of course. But in a way, this is why the fight's so big. It's because Yosef wasn't the firstborn from his father, but he was the firstborn from his mother, and he was supposed to marry that mother first. So Yosef technically should have been the firstborn. And Yosef will get double portion because both his sons will have rights to land in Israel. So you're actually bringing up a very interesting conversation about the firstborn rights and so on. And Reuben lost it because he switched the beds. Whatever we learned about, we'll still learn about that actually in another 2 weeks, another week. So yeah, and actually next week we'll learn about that. So that's a little bit of fascinating stuff about, so good question, but I hope you like the answer. To me, it was fascinating when I'm like, you know what, whole thing is to teach them capitalism. That's the whole story, is that, yes, it's okay. Somebody in the community has more power and prestige than you, and you better, and suck it up, get comfortable with it. That's that's in life. That's a portion of life. So there you go, Dave. You like that answer? My mind went to a place where which you would like the way the whole spin of this. Yes.
I do.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments on today's Chumash? Okay, so then we'll move on to today's Tanya.